Now is the time. A time you'll look back on. A time you adopt as inspiration. You will recollect this time, this moment, right now. Motivate yourself towards success. Overcome. Take over. The time is now.
Hello, hello.
Good evening again. The boys are back. Welcome everyone to Loaded HQ, the home of Loaded Mag. Loaded Mag special tonight, and it is very much a special show because we've got a very special guest, certainly for us Loaded boys, to come and join us. But first and foremost, obviously we always have to ask the boys, first of all, if we're drinking anything, what are we drinking? And are we all good? So the first priority is what we're drinking. And then secondly, are we okay?
I am, yes. Heineken, unfortunately, in a Budweiser glass. But yes, the bar is stocked and the cold ones are there. So yeah, I am having a couple tonight.
Great.
I did not get the memo. I'm on water. Sorry, lads.
Me too, Zaz. I'm on apple and black ovens, Robinson's finest.
Say, Holly's come with the kids, Ribena. Someone's going to be fucking go mad.
It's all gone. Oh no!
Yeah.
If the camera goes off, we know why. Then we know why.
Yeah.
He's in the kitchen answering questions.
Well, look. First and foremost, if you didn't see us on last night, we had a fantastic show with Dom Sker from the Shields Gazette making his debut on Loaded HQ and on YouTube in general. Great to chat to him, great knowledge, and we'll look forward to having him back at some point. If you haven't watched it, give that a watch, but only after you've watched this. So, we spoke a couple of weeks ago, in fact, about getting Mitch on, and Mitch is, really appreciates the time coming on to Loaded. He's been on before, and I personally really appreciate him coming on tonight because I wasn't on that show previously. So it's great to actually kind of sit with him and have a chat. But look, don't hear it from us. Let's get him on now.
Here's Mitch. Welcome, Mitch.
Lads.
Hey, Mitch.
Hey, fella.
There he is.
Evening, lads.
Good stuff.
Mitch, what are you drinking?
Vodka and Coke.
Vodka and Coke, yeah, because somebody's already asked in the chat already. The show can't start unless Mitch says what he's drinking.
Yeah.
There you go.
I've been well. This is my third podcast tonight. We did Geordie's here, Geordie's there on Matters, and then we did a pre-record for next week for Steve's away, and then I've had half an hour just to recharge my glasses and run to loo, and then come back on with you guys. So you know.
So you got for the marathon run then tonight. Jeez.
Oh, aye, the night's big night.
Nah, great stuff. Look, we're just gonna get straight into it. So look, one of the things that obviously you may have talked about before, but certainly from my point of view, the Eddie Howe sort of assessment really. Obviously he's been in since back in the November. How have you assessed Eddie Howe's performance as Newcastle manager? And the reason why I say this is because around sort of early January time, there were question marks about Eddie Howe. Certainly after the Watford game when it was 1-1. But how have you sort of assessed his performance as manager of Newcastle over as a whole?
Very valid questions, I think, at the time as well. I did a podcast for Arab News recently, and I was on with Ali Khaled, who's the sports editor, big Liverpool fan. Top bloke, friend of a lot of Geordies here in Dubai and in the Middle East generally. And I think Ali got it and absolutely hit the nail on the head. He talked about Eddie Howe's tenure at Newcastle being in thirds. That you had the first third where you didn't see a new manager bounce. And by the end of that third, everybody was asking, quite valid questions. If you heard me and Steve Hasty talking about it, maybe he's last week on Amigos, or maybe he's the week before, I'm not sure which. I was using this phrase, and Steve's nodding his head in the background because Steve was one of the first ones to sit and talk to me. But hey, I'm not sure about this. But I think the questions were quite valid because we didn't see, that we didn't get that new manager bounce that a lot of teams get. We had this sort of, we looked better, we looked more organised perhaps, but there was no spark. And then he had that middle third when things started to turn around and he started to pick some results up, but it still wasn't, he wasn't knocking doors through windows. And then we've had that unbeaten run, ended by the 2 games at the end of it, unfortunately. But that unbeaten run where you could see something very different was happening. And I think it's been much more of a slow, methodical turning around of events with a bigger picture in mind and a longer term in mind, rather than just a quick fix and a bounce and then wondering what do we do next. I think I said this on Friday gone, that I very much feel when you go in that dressing room, it's Eddie's way or no way. And I think that's a huge message. I think that's a huge message to the squad.
Yeah.
But his man management seems something special to me, and I don't say that lightly. I think to get out of people, to have people who are no longer in the 25 still involved day in, day out, and keen to be involved day in, day out, and to be out here in Dubai as part of the group still. I think that's a really important thing. I think it's also reflective, though, of just how bad the previous 2 years, were in terms of the mentality into the squad. Ryan Fraser's the classic example. I can't remember seeing Ryan Fraser with a smile on his face until Eddie Howe turned up. And now every other picture's a big daft grin. I know people inside. Yeah, and I see people, and I know people inside the club who were calling him a miserable sod. From the minute he arrived, he did nothing but whinge and moan. This wasn't what I was promised, and this wasn't what it was said on the tin. Wasn't happy with this, wasn't happy with the training, wasn't happy with that. Was totally demotivated. And I think he's the classic example of how, as much as he's been turned around, I think there's other things in the squad have been turned around. Could you imagine John Joe Shelby writing a letter of apology like he did the other day under Steve Bruce?
I think the thing with Fraser, Mitch, was I think where he was at compared to now was evident in the game where he came on as sub and got duly sent off.
Yes,
because it was a tackle that you could see. It was, I'm taking out my frustration and I'm pissed at everything, and I don't actually care because I don't want to be here and I don't want to be on the pitch
and have a bit of that. You're right.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. And I think it's key to see you can't turn people's attitudes around overnight like that. And I think this slow progress and turnaround, and without the big new manager bounce, is probably symptomatic as much as where the entire inside of that club, the heart of the club, was at, which was just riddled. And so I think that's the genius part of this, is that he's taken them to a place from where all hope seemed to be lost to where we've got hope again. Do you know what I mean? And that return of hope means so much. And I think he needs. I can't praise him enough for doing that. I really can't.
It takes a lot for a manager to come in to change. And it's been talked about quite a lot recently. The 3 players that you would have expected to leave the club and have no future at Newcastle United, or the 3 players, and 2 of them you've talked about that have actually been turned around under Eddie Howe. You know, you've got your Ryan Fraser that you talked about. You talked about Martin, quite rightly talked about the game that he got sent off.
Yeah.
I'm still of the mindset that he intended to get himself sent off, because I think every one of that squad felt that that night at Bramall Lane was the night that Steve Bruce was going to get sacked, and I think he tried to help it along. It didn't work out that way, but I'm convinced that he went into that game feeling like if he had a moment like that, that it could potentially cost the team, and in the long run, it would benefit the team because Bruce would be gone. And we kind of tussled with that because we were hearing little bits and bobs, but then you go on to John Joe Shelby, and I'll talk a little bit about John Joe Shelby in a bit. I'll ask all of you guys a question with regards to him, but then we've not talked about Joelington, the three players that we felt that would be out the club. And look, I was one of them. We've talked about it, whether it was on Matters, whether it was on Loaded, on various shows that we've been on. We all said at that point that Joelington has no future. I remember saying, I hope when he was linked, Joelington was linked earlier on in the season with a loan move to Turkey. I was going, yes, get him out, get him gone. Now he's one of the first on the team sheet. But like you said, it's down to Eddie Howe. And look, I'll come to the rest of you boys with this question, because I think Mitch has made a good point. Is that we didn't get that bounce. And we had a real tough set of fixtures in between that. You know, was there at any point for any of you three boys where you thought, I'm not quite sure here? Because I never had that feeling, because you know how I felt about Eddie Howe way back when, a year ago, when we were linked with him. But did you have a point where you were kind of feeling something's not right here?
I'll jump in first, Pete. No, because I remember us talking about it as well. When we at that stage, we were kind of nearly lining ourselves up for potential relegation, and I think we were saying that we would stick with Eddie Howe, even if he brought us down, depending on the manner in how he sent us down. If it was just narrowly went down, we'd stick with him, and then we'd give him the first few games, maybe to the first break in the championship, and then make an assessment. Then if we're at the top of the league, stick with him. He'd get us back up, but we'd make the decision then. So no, I think we were willing to give him a chance. If we had been still in the situation now, I think we would have been potentially calling for him. But no, it was too. We had to give him a chance. It was too early. If that's in that initial third, let's say.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, well, Pete, you know my thoughts, and obviously, you know, I'll be the first to hold my hands up and say, you know, I was a bit hasty, but I think I got sucked in with the whole Allegri, Conte, Emery, and then obviously we got Eddie Howe, and I know Pete, you know, kudos to you. You were fully behind the Eddie Howe appointment, and I must admit it was a bit flat for me when we got him. Maybe because of the media, you know, whenever Eddie Howe was spoken about at that point, it was always, oh yeah, but he went down with Bournemouth, didn't he? And people forget about the 3 or 4 years beforehand when he was getting mid-table finishes with a side like Bournemouth. Do you know what I mean? It's always the negative. So I think when we got him, I was a little bit downbeat, and then obviously, you know, I was there at St. James's for the Brentford game, and I was thinking, come on, this is it. Now, obviously, Eddie wasn't there because I think he had COVID, didn't he? So he had a difficult start to his tenure, but he's surpassed my expectations so much. And, you know, what he's done, like you rightly say, Pete, what he's done with the squad and the players that we've got at the moment, the fact that he's turned, it's like turning a big ship, isn't it? He's literally getting performances out of the likes of Joelington, out of Ryan Fraser, even the likes of Emil Kraft are coming in and doing a job. And under Steve Bruce, that was just not happening. So you know, it's exciting because you look at when he joined, and let's not forget, lads, we know we didn't get our first win till December. And if you look at the league table now, I'm fed up with the media constantly going on about how a wonderful season Crystal Palace have had and a wonderful season that Southampton have had. And I'm thinking we're 3 points behind Crystal Palace. And we had no wins up until the 4th of December. And, you know, Eddie Howe, he's just going under the radar. He's recently won Manager of the Month, which is quite rightly deserved. And I'm really, really pleased for him. But I'm just excited because I just want to get to that 37, 38 points where I know for a fact that we're safe. And then I'm just looking forward to the summer because the impact he's had since he's come into the club, it makes your mouth water when you think he's got a full summer with those players. We'll get rid of some dead wood, which, you know, should have been removed a while ago. We bring in even, you know, more fresh blood. And we've got half a season under Bruno Guimaraes' belt. He's going to come into next season and be absolutely firing. And then that's not to mention, you know, the players that we're going to bring in. Hopefully we can secure Matty Target on a permanent deal. I think he's been great since he come in. So yeah, I'm just excited. But yeah, he's surpassed all of my expectations, and long may it continue. I always thought, Pete, when we brought Eddie Howe in, that he was kind of for the short to medium term. But I'm starting to be swung now. I'm starting to think, is it possibly medium to long term?
Definitely. And look, when we get to the summer, when the safety is confirmed, I think it'd be good to get us all around the table again and have this discussion about Eddie Howe, because I think there's more to Eddie Howe that we haven't seen yet. I think there's an addition to Eddie Howe. I think we talked about it on the Andrew Musgrove show when he came on, and we talked about, you know, the journey that Eddie Howe's had over the last 18 months out of management, where he went to Maurizio Sarri and spent time there. He went to Diego Simeone at Atletico Madrid. He spent time with Jurgen Klopp. He is coming back a very different manager, and I think we've already seen little snippets of what's to come. But I just wanted to read you out these stats at this point. So on the 19th of December, we lost 4-0 to Manchester City. Okay, really, really disappointing defeat. Obviously, we had the Ryan Fraser fiasco with the various VAR decisions against us that day, and in the games previous. We were 19th in the table. Okay, 19th of December. So what? That's just over 3 months ago. 10 points from 18 games, 3 points behind Watford at that point, who had 2 games in hand, and also a 13+ goal difference. 6 points behind Leeds, and Burnley had played 3 games less than us. So we're obviously looking to really push up the league. When you look at that league table now, and you look at where we're at as a club right now, for me, regardless of those 2 results that have just gone by, that is transformative in what Eddie Howe has done at Newcastle United. I don't think there's any other manager that would have come in at any level and done what Eddie Howe's done with this crop of players, with those 3 particular players that we've mentioned, and where we're at right now as a club. I think it's unbelievable, and I definitely think there's more gears to Eddie Howe than that. But yeah, I just think fascinating stats and information from where we've been nearly 3 months ago to where we are now. I don't think there's any, and I could be wrong, I don't think there's any team where we were at that point that have gone on to actually keep themselves in the league with how lower points we had at that stage in the season. I could be wrong.
I think would be the first team to stay up who had 18 points by a certain time. I think, yeah, something like that. Look, there's a lot more to Eddie Howe than I think people realise. My understanding is he was already under consideration by Ashley and Charnley before the takeover went through. And I know he'd been up to Newcastle and had talks with Charnley, 100%, around about the time he was being linked with Celtic. And so he was already on the radar. My understanding is when he turned up to speak to the new owners, he gave a presentation that made everybody stay silent for 5 minutes after he'd finished. And that presentation was basically a blueprint of what I'm going to do, where I'm going to take you, and where you want to go in the future. And I think that's why suddenly, when everybody was clamouring for a director of football and everybody was clamouring for football people, in inverted commas, to be involved, suddenly the game changed because they had a blueprint and they had somebody that they felt confident was more than a safe pair of hands. And they could actually then take that time and work with Eddie Howe in terms of picking people like Dan Ashworth about the DNA of the club and restructuring the DNA of the club. And I think you find there's a lot more of Eddie Howe in all of that than people would probably believe or understand. And I think that's a really significant thing.
Yeah.
And I think he's obviously got the ear of the owners. I gather Jamie Rubin was his biggest champion to begin with. And so I think as time unfolds and as we learn a little bit more, I think we'll understand how much more of Eddie Howe has been poured into this. And that remarkable turnaround statistically that you're talking about, Pete, is ridiculous, really. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I think from that from that appointment as well, Mitch, from a couple of things I'd read and seen, was that after that presentation that he did to the owners, it was actually the chairman, it was actually Yasser that went, "This is your man, this is your man. There is nobody else. Go get him," which I think is fairly indicative of him as a chairman and what he's seen in Eddie Howe. But I think for me with Eddie Howe, despite the start, I take a fairly philosophical approach to it, in that it takes a little while to turn around the Titanic, does it not?
Yeah.
And that's what we were. We were a sinking ship. So, when you're at full speed heading towards the iceberg, it takes a while to put those engines in reverse, slow it, and turn it around 90 degrees to get out of it. So I think there was always going to be that, disappointing we didn't get the little manager bounce. But I think when you look back at it, if you were to play this season back, it was a squad that was bereft of ideas, bereft of confidence, had no leadership, didn't really know where it was going.
The only real
that takes time to change
in that squad, he's done two things for me. The turnaround with Joelington is amazing. I'm one of the few people probably who said all along I did believe there was a footballer in there somewhere. He just looked lost wearing a number 9 shirt and playing up front. When you look at him, he's built like, I've seen cruiserweight boxers less cut than him. He's a big unit.
Yeah.
You stick him in that role in centre mid, there's nobody should be able to take the ball off him. This was always my frustration with Shola Amiobi. He was 6'4" but jumped 4'6". And never seemed to be able to use the size and bulk that he had. He's playing alongside Alan Shearer, somebody you should learn stuff like that off, and he never seemed to be able to do it. And he's taken Joelington and shaped him into a role where he obviously feels comfortable. And where he's comfortable, he's then doing what obviously comes naturally, which is a bloody big unit. Try and take the ball off him if you can. But he's also putting square pegs into square holes. Kraft, I've heard you mention. Yeah, he's not my idea of a world beater. But he's a Swedish international right fullback. Under Bruce, he played most of his games either as a right-sided centre-back or a right wing-back, which he is neither of. He's a right fullback. Different role. And so how can we expect him to perform when the poor bugger probably doesn't have a clue whether he's coming or going? He never got a settled role in the side. He never got an ability to lay a claim for a right fullback berth, because most of the time he was either on the right side of the three or he was being expected to push further forward and be a wing back, which he is not, patently. And so it's just simple things like that. Get it back to basics. Keep it simple in some occasions. We've got this awful thing about in football, about forcing things and forcing people into systems, and because for a long time in a world of square pegs and round holes, Joelington was a bloody octagon. You didn't know what to do with him. Where do you put that? And then suddenly he's been able to shape him into something which I think he's probably, by doing that, saved for 40 million quid in the summer. Yeah. There's somebody we don't need to buy, so we can concentrate on other areas of the team where we need to strengthen. And that in itself, fantastic. But I think also then he's had this ability to get inside people's heads and get this togetherness, and he's added people like Trippier, another positive voice in the dressing room. Target, what an absolute solid signing he's been. And he's starting to really sort of shape the dressing room in a good way. And the one person I need him to get through to next is Saint-Maximin. To let him unleash the talent that he's got. is I would love to sit down with them and say, you know what, the only person who can win a Ballon d'Or is you. If you want to, and you listen to the advice you're being given, and get on board with a plan, stop being an arse in the dressing room, because I gather he can be. But you know what, we can put up with stuff like that. You know, it was like I said on Amigos the weekend, you know, ahead of the Dubai trip, I bet they had loads of paperwork to do, had to hand their passports in, and this and that and this and that. And I've got this, I bet you, a pound to a penny, if I had a mortgage, I would put my mortgage on it. I bet his was the last passport handed in, and I bet he did the paperwork with a biro on the plane, wrapped in a blanket, complaining about the air conditioning or something like that, you know. Now, that I don't mind. It goes with the territory with some of these players who have that panache and the laissez-faire that they can have when they're a bit of a maverick. But if it goes along with negativity and saltiness, don't want it. Now, if there has been that going on, it hasn't really leaked out the dressing room. And that's testimony to Eddie Howe, if that's the case. That he's able to keep everybody on board with a plan without having somebody rocking the boat and making things difficult, you know. And so all of these things make a big difference. He's had his social media team working overtime since he's come back from his little break. There might be a number of different reasons for that, in my opinion, but at the end of the day, that last little bit where he's on the treadmill and sweating and saying, right, let's bring it. Yeah, let's bring it. Let's see it from you, kiddo. That's what we want. That's what we want. Because if you turn around, the stats don't lie about how creative he can be. And that's him now, where many people are very quick to criticise, you know, where his end product's a bit shit. He's actually still the most creative player we've got. Imagine if he's 20% better. 20% better would be scary.
Yeah.
I don't know. And you boys might be able to give me the answers to this. But the one thing with all the criticism, I wasn't going to go here now, but we might as well, seeing as you brought him on.
we went there last night.
Yeah, we did.
night.
We questioned whether, you know, there's been question marks about ASM from that point of view. The one thing that I've noticed is I noticed this, and I said this to Chris way back when, is that I noticed a change in Saint-Maximin last summer when you got the media team were at their works and he was doing his sprinting training out in Greece, and he was doing all of his fitness training outside of pre-season, and that was him coming into this season to prove a point. And for me, initially, that was Saint-Maximin saying, right, I want to have a great season here because I've got intentions to move on to another club in the summer. And that was on the basis that the takeover wasn't going to happen and that we were going to fight another relegation. And he even made the point in an interview, I do not want to fight another relegation after this, which said that if we haven't got new owners by that point, I want out. And he would be fair to do that. It had been 3 years at the club. It would have been more than fair to do that. The one thing I will say, and the stat guys in the chat and girls in the chat, you guys might know the question. I am convinced that although people question mark his final ball, he's on the verge of scoring just as many goals this season as he has in previous. He's got more assists, I think, in the season than previous. But more importantly, Saint-Maximin has completed more 90 minutes this season than any other season. And I can say that without knowing the stats, but I can say that for fact. Saint-Maximin in the previous 2 seasons would get brought off after 70 minutes. Yeah. Why? Because the team and himself weren't fit enough to last 90 minutes. And he was getting if he was playing anything beyond 75 minutes, it was always a risk. You look at the Southampton game when he ended up being out for 5 or 6 weeks because he was too tired and Bruce had already made his subs and he ended up pulling his hamstring and being out for 5 or 6 weeks. That was, I think, in his first season. You know, he is now lasting 90 minutes. And if you notice, I don't know if you guys have noticed, his sprint, he's a dynamic sprinter. He will run long distances with the ball at his feet. That is not easy to do. That is where you get special people, special players that can do that. He's doing that for 90 minutes. Even in some of the best players in their prime weren't doing that for 90 minutes. Alan Saint-Maximin is. And for me, we need to take hold of that, and we need to remember that. And that requires a high level of fitness. A fitness for the last 4 weeks he hasn't had. So that's me just putting it out there. I don't know what you guys think about that.
We know from when Howe came in, when he did the fitness assessments, our squad was on average between 20 and 30% behind where he expected them to be at that point of the season, which is nothing short of a disgrace. And that's not the players' fault, that's the way they're being trained.
Yeah. Or not trained.
Or not trained, as the case may be. Exactly.
As the case may be, yeah.
Pete's point about Saint-Maximin are very, very, very valid about the way he plays and the kind of player he is. Devil's advocate, if he was that good when Mike Ashley was the owner, he would have been sold last season. So why wasn't there a big queue lining up for him? Somebody somewhere still has doubts. And I suspect some of that was the doubts that he came to us with attitude and, a lot of different things that had been chucked around, which, to be honest with you, for the most part, haven't seen. Quite the opposite. We see a young man who's quite happy to trot down to the food bank with a cheque for 10 grand. That's not somebody with a bad attitude. That is, you've got to look at all these plus points too. Players like him are entitled to be mercurial, huffy and moody, because when they deliver, by God, they're usually something extra special. And I just would like to see a little bit of that return. And some of that might have been fitness. He hasn't trained much. He just doesn't sometimes help himself. He'll do things that just don't look good. I'll tell you one tale about the first time he went back to France. When he come back on his private jet, he hadn't done all the paperwork at the time. He needed all these elite sportsman exemption forms for travel during COVID. He hadn't done all of that. And 4 hours at the airport, the club had to dig him out of a hole. What I was told that he did to try and clear an elite sportsman exemption was actually quite laughable, which I won't repeat. But, it's like, he did what? And again, we can tolerate all of that because it's like, okay, it's a quirk of somebody who is potentially, a match winner. You can put up with that if he's helping them win matches. At the minute, I'm just seeing a little bit too much talk for my liking. I now want to see returns. Let's see what comes in the next few games.
Just on that, Mitch, like professional footballers, surely they have multiple assistants that could help them through all that paperwork.
Not always, mate.
No?
If anybody's heard me talk on this before, you might have, pastoral care in football is almost non-existent. That's why for every Sean Longstaff, you've got a Nile Ranger. Because the people who've got a family network or a good support network who can put an arm around them and basically say, don't be a dick, will thrive. The lads who suddenly go from earning 5 grand a week to 40 grand a week and are driving around in a tripped out bloody Range Rover with bling all the way up their arms and acting like a dickhead will eventually fade away from the game. And that's not their fault. A lot of these guys don't have a classical educational background. A lot of these guys don't have supportive family networks around them. A lot of these guys don't come from the best socioeconomic groups in the country. If you listen to the recent podcast with Micah Richards talking about his reaction when he went from 5 grand to 40 grand a week, and it took him around 2 months to come back to earth and start performing again. And that's somebody who actually seems reasonably level-headed, and has a reasonable head on his shoulders, and obviously has had a little bit of support compared to other players who just disappear off the face of the earth. And this is a problem. It's a big problem in football. And a lot of them are left to their own devices. They have agents who are in that. Saint-Maximin's agent's his brother, I believe. So what he's doing, he's supporting an entire family network, probably. and finding ways to involve them in his business. But that doesn't make them the best advisors always. It's where I think as a sport at the top flight in the UK and in England specifically, we need to look at what goes on in academies and how he can provide pastoral care, how he can help young men manage ridiculous amounts of money. And, you know, you take someone like Steve Harper, never a superstar, but he used his money wisely. I gather he's the biggest landlord in Durham. That's the most properties managed in Durham. You know, that's somebody taking out earnings from football and using it wisely, building a future. You know, looking after themselves and looking after their family going forward. I may be wrong on that, but there's something like that, you know. And again, let's look at what's happened to Niall Ranger since he's left Newcastle United. Where was the supportive arm around his shoulder if he would have taken it? And it's a real quandary about what you do. So Bobby Robson said it best ages ago, you know, how do you make a rich man sweat? I've got a mate coaches at West Ham. A great example. You speak to him about, he's bearing in mind he's worked with some very, very, very talented players. You think that the kids who've been through the West Ham system, you think players that West Ham have signed, you ask him who's the best player you've ever worked with. Do you know what his answer is? Ravel Morrison.
Wow.
Says he was, based on talent alone, simply on talent alone, the best player he's ever worked with. Right foot, left foot, head. He says you could put 5 pence pieces around the pitch and blindfold him and say, right, hit that one. He'd do it. He wouldn't even think twice about it. But he didn't, excuse the language, give a fuck about anything. He'd turn up late for training and throw 50 quid in your face. He'd leave training when he wanted. Didn't give a damn. I got a little bit involved with it because I got asked some advice because they loaned him to Lazio. And when you go to Italy on a medical, dental is part of their medical. And they look at your oral hygiene and your oral fitness. And he needed 20 grand's worth of dental work done in London before he was able to go and sign for Lazio, apparently. And I got asked, does that sound about right to you, Mitch? And obviously they were paying Harley Street prices, but it did actually sound about right. So before Lazio would even touch him, he had to have all of this stuff done and tip the boxes ticked. And even then, he only got all that done, like literally with hours left before they could sign him, because he didn't give monkeys. You know, and it's really difficult when you got look, if that's a talent that Alex Ferguson couldn't control, that should tell you everything. But to this day, he says to me, if you say the most talented player you've ever worked with, bearing in mind he's worked with Joe Cole, he's worked with Frank Lampard, amongst others, and he still says Ravel Morrison. But the problem with Ravel Morrison, he did not have that support network to look after him. And that's what you need to look at. I think something that's glaringly missing in the sort of academy structures across the country is we lose too much talent because they don't have the ability, and that's not in a derogatory way, they don't have the life skills to cope. When somebody says, there's 40 bag a week in your back pocket, off you go, and to tell them to not get pissed and hit somebody over the head with a champagne bottle in Tuk Tuk Palace. You know, it's difficult. Yeah, we've all been there, you know.
Yeah.
But,
I guess
so, you know, it's something that I get quite passionate about because I see, because of Niall Ranger, I believe we lost an entire cohort of young players. Tavernier ended up going out of the club. Young Shane Ferguson ended up going out of the club, and a number of others who could have stuck around and done a lot more than they did. And I think that was all caused by the disruption of having Niall Ranger in that cohort.
Do you think, Mitch, hard to do in a way, team, whatever, at an age level, do you think that wages capped at an age level progress through the teams? probably hard to do because if you've got, let's say, you know, a Jack Grealish or a Declan Rice or whoever the player happens to be, Paul Gascoigne,
players
with the talent that they've got, you know, and they get a loan, they get a move to Spurs or Arsenal or Man United, they're going to be offered the biggest wages. But
yes, they are.
You know, should at an age, you know, a Phil Foden under 20, should it be that the maximum wage you can get in a week is X? Is that workable in your mind?
Players' wages should be commensurate with what they're worth. That's very much the case. But it doesn't necessarily mean you don't have to be paid in cash every bloody week. You can set trusts up, you can set funds up where it can be, you know, you can get access to this money at a certain point in time. Yeah. And I think things like that should be explored. Don't get us wrong, there's some young players out there who've got these support networks, who've got great family backing, who want to understand that this career is a special career and it only lasts so long. So pissing it up the wall isn't going to do you any good, mate. But they sometimes feel like the minority. I know they're not, but it does feel like that sometimes, you know. And it really saddens us because it spoils some talent, and the game's much poorer for it.
Yeah,
we've always lost maverick talent. You know, people like Robin Friday, who basically ended his career by scoring an own goal, turning around and sticking two fingers up to his manager and walking off the pitch. You know, you'll always lose maverick talent like that. But to lose it at 18, 19, 20, when they've burned really bright for such a short period of time, it makes our game all the poorer. And we've got to find a way to stop that happening. We've got to find a way to help to get these kids invested in themselves, in the game, and in the bigger picture of the world. You know, you take something like what Rashford does. You know, there's somebody who's totally aware of where he's from and where he's going and how he can help. The concept of money can't buy you happiness, but actually it can. But what you've got to do is give it away.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I watched
a very different thing.
I watched talking about talent and stuff. I actually watched the podcast Gary Neville's Overlap with Declan Rice at the weekend, and he struck me, despite, you know, kind of hitting the ranks with England, you know, being captain of West Ham. I actually really enjoyed the show because I found the kid very much down to earth, despite the fact he's probably earning 100 grand a week or more. He was very localized. He wanted nothing more than to be a West Ham lad. He goes around the mother's house every second day. He spends his time in the local area. He's invested money in local parks for the kids, development areas to get kids off the streets and stuff like that. I just thought, like, that's what, like, when you talk like you're talking, that's what, some of that is what's missing. You know, despite all of the stardom and all the levels that he's got, he's still this young kid from a rough area outside of West Ham who goes, I'm going to look after my neighborhood and I'm going to look after the kids that aren't as fortunate as me. And I've got enough money to have me holiday, but like, I don't actually need 100 grand a fucking week. So I'm going to do some good with it. And I just thought all of the pods I watched that Gary Neville done, I actually thought it was the best one he's done. Declan Rice was just a really genuine, nice guy.
He wasn't so localized for Ireland, though, Martin.
No, he wasn't. No. He was only getting 30 grand a week then, Daz.
The more and more we see the game at the minute, and the bigger the exposure, the Premier League in particular, it's the global impact of the Premier League. Come out to this part of the world and see how the Premier League works here. Yeah. And people genuinely aren't interested in many other. They're maybe interested in Barcelona and Real Madrid when they play each other, but only when they play each other. They're not interested in the rest of the La Liga.
Yeah. Well, Real Madrid fans are still in hiding. So.
They're only interested in the Premier League. Yeah. And more there comes a greater degree of social responsibility for some of these young stars. Yeah. And that too could be for some of these kids a big burden. And how people deal with it, how people deal with these things, everybody's different, you know. Someone like Gaza, bless him, was never set up to deal with the world stage fame he ended up having. And again, it pains me when people are patently struggling to deal with that, and there's no way to hide. And sometimes I think the game as a whole, we need to look across the game as a whole and find out how can we support these guys, and make them better people, but also make them people that inspire the watching public in more ways than just rainbow flicks, backheel goals, and 30-odd thunder bastards. There's got to be more to it than this.
Just linked into this topic, actually, was an article in the Chronicle this week from Stephen Taylor was interviewed, and he was talking about Flavien Turvan. And the support network, I guess, that wasn't available to him, and that's something that the new owners, I know, no doubt, it'll be one of the things that they'll put in place, and especially with Dan Ashford coming in as well, that would be, it'll make it more secure for people coming in to be able to fit in.
Chuck you another name, Marcelino,
yes,
great hair.
Kerma injured centre back who missed a lot of time because of a finger injury. When he came to our club, he spoke barely any English, had no Spanish interpreter, had a child with special needs who needed to find a school, and was just left to his own devices. Jeez. There was no support for him and his family there, other than the other players who spoke a scattering of Spanish that were in the squad. Ruud Gullit was too busy bouncing between his flat on the quayside in Amsterdam to be involved with it all. I know we're taking the piss out of his finger injury. Actually, he nearly lost his finger. I think people don't realise how bad an injury it really was. But
take it all back.
If you put yourself in his position, right? You're at home, your wife and family are miserable, you're doing the best you can at a new football club, you're getting dogs abuse off the fans because nobody's sticking up for you. Could you be asked? If it was 50-50, could you play it today? Nah, I'm still going to get my wages tomorrow. There's always two sides. And so that's that kind of thing's another reason why, I have concerns about pastoral care. When I had a flat in the town centre, the club had the 2 penthouse flats in the apartment block I lived in, and we used to get players coming and going from them. We used them as a short term. I suspect the club haven't got them anymore. I bet they're in Mike Ashley's property portfolio these days. But I tell you who we had in was Seb Basson, and he was oft to be seen wandering around our apartment block. And when he first came, what a lovely sweet kid he was, sitting humming little French rhymes to himself, and he had his mum over and his sister come to do his washing and shit like that. And then he got paired up with Charles and Zogbier and turned into an absolute little twat. And you could see the change happening. Was the more and more Zogbier was around, the more like Zogbier he became. It pained us because when he first moved in, what a sweet kid he was. And it's this kind of thing where if there's no pastoral care, no support network within the club, I'll tell you who tried to change it. And again, this will probably surprise a few people. Was Allardyce, and that was one of the reasons Allardyce was always popular with players, as he actually used to go around and have a cup of tea at the kitchen table with the family.
Pint of
see
gravy.
How you doing? Is there anything we can help you with? When I worked on Teesside for a while, I got to know Jamie Pollock a little bit, and I had a long chat with Jamie, and Jamie's missus is such a lovely lady, and we got talking about Jamie's time in football, and she would not have a bad word said about Sam Allardyce in front of her. If I started on about Allardyce as a manager, I'd get the glare off Jamie Pollock. Basically, shut your mouth, mate. This is going to kick off in a minute. Because she adored him. And Allardyce offered them a way out of Crystal Palace when Jamie was desperate to get out of Crystal Palace. Probably prolonged his career, but certainly looked after him and his family. And I think he saw when he was a manager at Newcastle, probably the only good thing he did was to try and put some of that support network in place for players that he was bringing in. Because it is important. These guys are people too.
Yeah. Okay, a couple of bits you said there helps us change direction slightly. So, obviously, there's been a few bits going on, and obviously, you know, we know, having done a few shows with you, and obviously being good friends for a while, there's been a lot in recent weeks. Obviously, the demise, I suppose, of Abramovich and the fiasco at Chelsea, and obviously the game. Talking to Dom last night, and the game against Chelsea, and some of the questions that have been posed to Eddie Howe regards the Saudi regime. So I suppose from a man of many calibers and experience and living in the Middle East, what's your take on some of the questions that get thrown at Eddie with regards to, you know, some of the actions that happen within Saudi? And do you think it's fair he gets them? Is he the front of the club? Should they be going higher? What's your take on all of that, Mitch?
I think for some things, they're very much directing them at him because he's the only person that can direct them at, and they probably should aim them higher. For some of those questions, I don't think they're Eddie Howe's to answer. And I think what isn't being allowed here is the refusal to engage in some of those questions does not equate to ignoring the issues. Because he knows fine well, as Amanda Staveley found out at the football thing that the Times organised, the Financial Times organised, there's always a Tariq Panya waiting around the corner with a gotcha. And then those words will be taken out of context. And then there's another back page and another stick to beat with. So I can understand his desire to be super cautious on tackling some of this. I think we've made it quite clear as a fan base, we're not prepared to just sit and ignore shit. You know, there were some words were really turned the wrong way for me on the back of the Chelsea game. I had one sports writer saying there were many Saudi flags in the away end. And you talk to Liam Kennedy, who was at the game, he says, right, look, I couldn't see the full away end, I could see about 2/3 of it, and I could count 2 flags. So, right, laws of averaging, maybe there was a 3rd flag and the other 3rd he couldn't see. That's not many, by any description. They also fail to mention the advertising board that has a Saudi flag on it from the Saudi Chelsea Supporters Club, which is a permanent fixture in Stamford Bridge.
Yeah. Which was actually pictured in a couple of the prints, but was never mentioned.
Yes, never mentioned. And so this is where it's unfair. There's a lot of things are framed to be a certain way to then go and point score. And again, that's not saying these issues should be ignored or shouldn't be addressed. But there's one thing I've learned in many, many years of interacting with Newcastle fans. The last thing they ever are is fucking quiet about anything. Whether it's the temperature of the beer, the temperature of the pies, how many chips they've got compared to their mate who bought some at the same time, and that's mine's tastes less than mine. But they're also not quiet about, hey, you look at the reaction to say the club supporting the player in Australia coming out. You look at the support for the Rainbow Laces campaign, and there were people from Saudi jumping onto those timelines saying, well, this is a disgrace against God and blah, blah, blah. But there was more Newcastle fans saying, oi, no, this isn't how we do it. And that's not representative of us. And they just ignore all of that, because it's convenient too, it's easy to. I think there are so many valid questions. And because he is sat in a press conference with reporters sat there, Eddie Howe's the easiest person to ask them to. I think he showed a big difference between the Chelsea press conference and the press conference he did in the midweek, somebody from the media team in the club has obviously pulled up one side and said, right, we need to get work on the city. Because he's at the end of the day, he's a figurehead for the club, and the things he says speak volumes in many different ways. But then for them to turn around and hold the way Tuchel reacted to some of the questions he was getting and saying this is how he should react in the media. What? At one point he had his head in his hands asking them to stop.
Yeah.
Annoyed
me. That's what annoyed me, Mitch.
And also, he's talking about an owner who was going out. They're asking Eddie Howe to comment on things regarding owners who are here for the long term. So yeah, I'm going to sit and criticise my boss in public. No problem. Sorry. And some of the things they're asking for, some of the things that some people are asking for, just can't and won't happen. They're asking for a generational change in Saudi Arabia to happen in 5 minutes. In the 10 years I've been in the Middle East, the changes in this part of the world are massive. We're coming up to Ramadan here. When I first come here, Ramadan was Ramadan. Everywhere was shut. If you did want something to eat as a non-Muslim, you had to basically go to the supermarket, buy it, and go and find somewhere to hide, which was often the bathroom, to eat it. Now, tourists will come to Dubai and they probably won't even notice it's Ramadan. I'll certainly be having a pint while I'm watching the match, and it'll be as close to normal as you could be. That's a huge change. People don't understand how much of a huge change that is for even the locals of Dubai, the older locals of Dubai, to get their head around that. That's actually, this is how we're changing. Yeah. Saudi's about 20 years behind. But when they're talking about certain things, beheadings and legal process, it's within a generation we were locking single mothers in mental asylums. It's within a generation that we were chemically castrating gays. Alan Turing, anyone? World War II hero? Committed suicide because of how he was treated? Because of his orientation? You know, this is in a generation in the UK. How many wrongs make a right? None. Absolutely none. And getting it's really valid to ask a lot of these questions though, because as a fan base we're in a really unique position to ask questions like this, because we've actually got a direct line to some of the people at the top end of the Saudi, and that message will get across. This is not a one-way relationship, and I genuinely believe that we have a really unique position to turn around and say, as Newcastle as a city is open, welcoming, we accept everyone for how they are, we are united, and we're united in every way that can, and we don't care what's the colour of your skin, whether you identify as a pan or whatever, we don't care.
Chris.
If you support that team that way, if you support that team in black and white, you're with us and we're with you. That's all that matters. And that message will get across. I think the Chelsea situation is super complicated. I think the government have dug themselves in a really big hole with Chelsea. I think that's something that's maybe worth a little chat on. Because what I'm hearing still from people within the game is they expect Chelsea to go into administration before the end of the season. Because the money's... I noticed today they're suddenly allowed to sell certain tickets again. Why? Because they need money to keep going.
Yeah, just broken into last hour, Mitch. The government amends Chelsea's license to fans to sell away tickets, women's tickets as well for the women's football. They've made a number of changes. So a license to fans to buy away tickets, cup games, and women's football. So they've already
they need the cash.
What sanctions they put in place.
They need the cash. It's an absolute holy hot mess. His ownership structure of the club was interesting to begin with. The company he owns Chelsea through, took a 1.5 billion loan from a British Virgin Islands company whose main owner is Roman Abramovich. That's why he's quite happy to write off a 1.5 billion loan, because he loaned it to himself. It's not altruistic. He's not being generous to facilitate the sale. Was the person he owes the money to is him. The sale's going to be super complicated, and they're trying to expedite it. Why are they trying to expedite it? Because if that club goes bust while the government effectively still got their hands on it, fans are going to get mental. The counterpoint to that is they'll turn and say, well, we tried, but we just couldn't find a suitable buyer. We're really sorry. And that's their get-out clause. And the people who are hanging around, two things scream danger to me. One, the emptiest cans make the biggest noise. And this seems to be 20 empty cans making a bid for it. And two, every single bid I've looked at has an element of leverage in it. I'm absolutely 100% sure of that. And leverage bids, basically, Glazer's Mark II, that club will never be run the same again. Ever. He's plugging such a big financial hole every month to keep it going. Is a US hedge fund going to be happy with that? Oh, the bloody hell. They're going to want to return out of that at some stage and soon. And so that the entire way Chelsea goes will be forever changed. Some might say that's a good thing. I bet the fan base doesn't.
I think that fan base is still expecting Saudi Telecom ownership, so I think they're going to be a bit disappointed.
Let's touch on that, because people are getting mixed up. Saudi Media Group are not Saudi Telecom. They are two distinct entities. Saudi Media has got links to Saudi Telecom, and that's where it becomes difficult for them, because there are links from PIF to Saudi Telecom. And that's why one of the guys who's a board member on both, they've actually already said, well, but he's not involved. He's just trying to help with find funding. Help with find funding? Why do you need funding? Because they're only worth 5 billion. Do you think a company's really going to sink half their actual wealth into buying a football club? I know plenty of crazy Saudi people, but none that crazy. And so it's going to be leveraged. And Saudi Media Group are not Saudi Telecom, absolutely not Saudi Telecom. They're two distinct entities, but there are interesting grey areas where it could get difficult for them. I'm not convinced that it's of all the bidders, they are not one of the most credible. And certainly what some of the Chelsea fans seem to be expecting that they're going to get isn't what they're going to get. And now, if they did buy Chelsea, I'd welcome that. Because do you think PIF want to be upstairs by Saudi Media Group?
Absolutely
not. That answers that question below there, Stephen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go.
How do I think it would affect Newcastle? They'd pump as much money as they bloody well could into it and blow them away.
There you go.
There's a couple of questions on the back of that, because you made a really good point in that, you've talked about out of all the different buyers. So it seems like we know who all the potential buyers are in the media, whereas we were told for 18 months that, if we were going to get an ownership, it would be done sort of, really, really quietly, and it would just get done when it gets done. Now, with everything being out in the media, no one seems to be asking that question of Chelsea. So, why is that? First and foremost, why does it seem to be acceptable for Chelsea to have all their bidders out in the open right now? You've got a different bidder every day coming forward saying, I want to buy Chelsea, I want to buy Chelsea. This is what I'm going to do to this great club, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. Whereas when it was happening to Newcastle, it was seen, these are not credible. When PIF were in the consortium were talking about their intentions by Newcastle, are PIF even interested though? There was all these negative, comments towards Newcastle that are very, very different. Yep. So it's great for us to see the comparison there, or the lack of comparison with regards to how Chelsea are operating. So
it's become a very. it's become a very different process because of the way the government have handled it. They've turned it into a public fire sale because they want it off their hands as quickly as they can get it off their hands. And they don't care. They really don't care who they're going to sell it to, as long as it's off their hands. And as long as the club doesn't go bust while the government are technically still controlling things. Because that'll be egg all over their face. And another load of potential voters that will upset, and it'll just makes them look stupid. That's why it's going on the way it is. It's a farce, mate. If it was my club, the amount of red lights going on my dashboard would scare me shitless. Because oh God, the amount of people who are proposing interest in it. You know, there's one, the Candy Group, where basically he's phoned all his Chelsea supporting rich friends and said, "Are you in?" And they've all given a tentative yes. And I tell you now, it'd be like organising a trip to Blackpool at the social club. You find when your time comes to take your money, everybody's got something else to do that weekend, you know, and suddenly not everybody's involved. And because all they've asked for is submissions of interest.
Yeah. Do you know what's interesting, Mitch? Listening to you talking here, and I remember, you know, obviously pre-takeover, and you know, we were all glued to the Three Amigos, and we were all obviously, you know, listening with intent to yourself, Heath, and Steve Hasty. And I remember way back when, and we were saying, you know, Newcastle, Mike Ashley currently wants, I think it was between 305 and 320 million. And, you know, some media outlets were going, "Oh, it's too much," and look at Southampton, they were going for the lesser amount and stuff like that. And when you start talking now about, you know, the likes of your Tottenhams, your Chelseas, your Man United, your Liverpools, it's no wonder, is it, the Saudi, the PIF group stuck around for Newcastle, because when you look at the fact that we've been bought for what, 305 million, and you look at some of the other places being banded around for clubs, well run club by Mike Ashley. People won't like me saying that, but you know, in terms of keeping the wage bill down,
top of the balance sheet league, yeah, absolutely,
yeah, and you know, fantastic fan base, city, passions, stars, and you know, PIF must have looked at that as well as Amanda Staveley and Mairdad and the Rubens, and thought, you know what, this is a little bit of a bargain, this isn't it? Because you're looking now, aren't you, like $2.5 million for Chelsea?
When we were having those conversations, we were being told by people within the game who actually do these deals. Because Steve Hasty and I worked with one 4 or 5 times on occasion, in particular latterly with the Bin Zayed farce. That was mental. That was really mental. Anyway, he was telling us that
surely he's got to be in for Chelsea, no?
What was his name again?
Us,
the guy?
Midhat,
yes. Remember following him somewhere.
Midhat's son's a Chelsea season ticket holder.
Don't be
but
surprised.
I don't think he'd dare put his head above the parapet again. Bless him. I love him. By the way, he's a great guy. Yeah, there was people in the game telling us that 305 million was cheap for Newcastle. And I think you might find, if you dig through some old Three Amigos, you'll actually hear me saying that at some stage. And we were constantly being reassured that's not an unreasonable price based on where the Premier League's about to go and what you're actually getting for your money. And again, it comes back to the fact that we were financially stable, and on an FFP point of view, we barely registered a blip. And that was everything for what people were wanting in a club. Other clubs that were available around the similar. The only other club that bothered me that could be value was West Ham, because they're London based. So you put a London waiting on their price. But the minute that their pornographer owners piped up that they wanted 800 million for that killed anything. Everybody looked at that and went, "You what?" That just absolutely torpedoed their sort of ideas that they were going to get sold at a premium. But there was 2 or 3 people within the game, 2 of whom work on football club deals on a daily basis, were going, "You know what, lads, 320, 330 is cheap." And so we were confident that Ashley was actually pitching it. And I know that wasn't what people wanted to hear. But he was pitching it at about the right amount. And he was only ever going to sell when somebody's serious, come down and slap that on the table. We nearly got there with a Canadian bid in 2014 with a lad called Jay French, who is a good friend of mine now. He's actually out here in Dubai. He's the head of the Museum of the Future project out here. Canadian with Geordie roots, and he had a bid that involved Rogers Telecom and the Gagliardi family, who own the Sandman Hotel in the town centre, amongst other things, and they own the Dallas Stars ice hockey team. This might be a loaded exclusive for you lads. Actually, I don't know if I've ever blabbed these names around before.
I've never heard you mention the details before, no?
And we helped them get very, very close, to the point where Jay's still got the signed agreement framed in his home. Signed by Derek Lambias, my friend Derek. And we got them super close. And what happened in the end was actually Ben started doing his usual, let's change the bid at the last minute. Yep. And the Canadians turned around and told him to F off. And that still rankles with me, because I would love Jay to have been the CEO. Because he's a football man. He was a professional footballer with Norwich. His mum and dad are from Chesterley Street. He's black and white. You know, he would have been an ideal level-headed guy to be in charge of the football club. But things happen for a reason. And here we are, I think end of 20 years later, and aren't things very different? So, you know.
I'll make it last. Pete does, and we got some viewer questions there, because I know people are firing them in. We've got a load starred.
We've got at least 20.
We're going to get something, otherwise we're going to get hung by those who watch us. Yeah.
And that's kind of something that Mitch, you know, we kind of pride ourselves on the fact that, you know, the guys and girls put their questions in to the guests that come in. They want to ask you these questions. To be fair, I'm looking through some of the questions in the chat.
Adam McCarthy, classic message.
Yeah,
we got it up.
Fantastic
good question.
Yeah. And look, there are a number of different topics we could have covered. We'll do it at a later date, no doubt. We'd love to get you back on at some point, but let's go to these questions now before you know they all fizzle away. Before they give up on us, yeah. Right, Daz, let's get the first one up.
Right. Let's go through, and we might try and whittle it down as well, because there are crossover with a lot of the questions. First one, if this will only take 5 seconds, what do you guys think about the UEFA plans for financial fair play?
It's another attempt to veto and to fend off the Super League, isn't it? The rich get richer. That's what it's about. It's about finding loopholes to make sure the rich get richer. Remember, if you pair that with the new Champions League format that I'm talking about bringing in, with the Swiss-style chess format, which will blow everybody's minds. That's going to explaining that to people's going to be like explaining E equals MC squared in words of 2 syllables and less. You know, it's ridiculous. But that's what it is basically. It's about protecting the rich clubs and the big so-called big clubs and keeping them happy so they don't go off and form their own Super League.
So how do you think it affects Newcastle United then? How do you think it would affect us in the long run?
I think there's precedents already being laid down that blow holes in a lot of these things. And I think we've got people in charge of our club who are very clever at working out how that works in a very legal and upstanding fashion. The one thing PIF were only ever going to do, and this is something we were told really early on, they're coming through the front door with their chins held high and their chests puffed out. They're not going to do anything backward and backhanded to get in, because they don't operate like that. And they won't operate in a sneaky way with FFP. They'll do it all up front, but very cleverly.
There you go. That answers that one.
I don't know who started this one, but one from Adam.
It wasn't me.
Early question. Early question for
fucking Adam McCarthy.
Using his specialist subject, my 7-year-old needs several baby teeth out. Is that normal for his age?
Well, I'm not a paediatric dentist, but I would like to know why. That's the thing. Dental disease and patterns of dental disease are changing at the moment. And I think certainly since lockdown, we're seeing a shift backwards in terms of I know the data I've seen from the UK is that the numbers of decayed, missing and filled teeth in kids are going up at quite an alarming rate. The number one admission into A&E at the moment are children with dental emergencies. There's that's huge. This decayed, missing,
sugar,
filled
and fizzy
teeth.
drinks.
What we could, basically tooth plus sugar plus time equals whole. It's not hard maths. However, there are lots of other factors in there, and you know what? I struggle to criticise people because it's not easy for everyone. I can sit in my dental ivory tower and lay out advice. Come on, man! You see how much I drink and smoke. You're going to take diet advice off me? Seriously, really?
If so, here's the hourly charge. Contact us for more.
Just professional hat on. Just drinking advice.
Professional hat on.
Yeah.
It is really hard for parents, particularly parents on certain incomes, for me to turn around and say, you need to be buying more fresh fruit and vegetables and don't buy the crap, when you can go and buy a pack of polos for 10 pence. And the economics of the situation change, and it's all about balance. It's really very difficult at the minute. My answer to Adam would be the whys, and speak to your practitioner about why, and then there'll be a solution there for you. And your practitioner shouldn't just be there just to refer for extractions, should also be there, right, how can we prevent this going forward? Because that 7-year-old with a high decay rate, for example, is going to become a teenager with a high decay rate, who's going to become a young adult with a high decay rate, and that's going to put pressure on healthcare systems. We now have definite links between oral health and general health, links between oral health and heart disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, diabetes, arthritis. From a sports dentistry point of view, oral health is now a marker of performance. If you take an elite group athlete and make them orally healthier, they perform better. It's all connected. Join the dots, as Ian Kennedy would say. It's
join the dots. Oh, I missed that one.
So go and get it sounds like you need some advice about prevention, and go and talk to your practitioner about that.
There you go.
Gosh, that was very serious from me.
What other channel would you get? Not only football, financial fair play, politics, Eddie Howe, and dental care, practitioner needs, and everything else. I mean, fuck me. There's nobody else doing this shit. Tell you.
Someone award-winning show.
Award-winning.
Next
question.
Next question. Okay, the next question is, and it's popped up about 3 or 4 times, is all about Luke Edwards' article today about summer transfer budget of 90 million. What are your thoughts, Mitch and panel? Mine is, it is absolute bullshit. I don't think he has a clue when it comes to the budget. But what's your thoughts, lads?
Same guy that forecast 50 million that we were going to spend because that's all we had for the January transfer window. So yeah, no, not for me. I think he's probably completely wrong. However, I would put a caveat in that, whereby I would say I think we will probably only see one very big signing, possibly in the summer, if we're lucky. And we will see other signings that fit in around the way that they want to move the team to the next stage. That will be my view. Mitch may know more, but that will be my take on summer spending. I don't think there'll be sensible signings that grow the team to the next stage, in my opinion.
Okay.
I just said on Geordie's here, Geordie's there before about this. Anybody who says they know what the budget is in the summer is talking out their arse. Yeah. At the end of the day, there was this thing put out early on in the whole discussion of business plans that they were talking about 50 million per window over the next 5 windows. I think that's gone out the window with the spend in January because it was necessary. But also we don't know what the rejigged sponsorship deals are yet. I have an absolute gut instinct that Castoria have been told that they're out after this season from some of the things I'm seeing and hearing from them at the minute. So I think there's going to be a lot of change behind the scenes in terms of income, and bearing in mind how FFP works, that then defines on what you can spend. So what this might be is a tempering of expectation and something to shut the bloody agents up.
Mitch, do you believe that in the summer, I'm sure Eddie Howe and the board and things, they'll probably have a figure in mind, and it will probably depend on how we finish the season. It will probably depend on who we decide to keep and who's available. And obviously this year, there's definitely some very interesting free signings out there, which I'm sure they're going to explore and have a look at. But do you believe that if, say, for example, a stellar player comes available who's maybe high on the list and maybe they didn't know he was available and say he was available for 50, 60 million or something like that, do you think they would, kind of bend the rules, so to speak, and go, do you know what, we're gonna go and get him because we've had our eye on him and we didn't know he was available, and it would make sense.
I think that's not a bad assessment, given how I understood some of the deals in the January window went. At one point, I was made aware of interest in about 6 or 7 players who all had stuff booked for them, ready to come and go, and it was so fluid that they were just basically parking stuff just in case this comes off, or just in case that becomes available. And I think that's very much how they do the summer window. I think they find they're fluid, they're proactive, not reactive, which is a very different way for Newcastle to be.
Yeah.
And I think if an opportunity came to put somebody in our squad and that might blow the budget for January, I think they'd do it. You've also got to remember how football support works in this region. They don't support teams, they support names. They're going to want a name for a shirt, even if it's somebody who's coming for a bit of a swan song. I do think we'll have somebody in there, and it might be somebody very left field. And we might be a little bit cynical or underwhelmed about it, but that won't be the case over here, I can tell you that. And getting behind Newcastle United is the closest thing I've seen happen. Because Saudi is getting behind Newcastle United. It's the closest thing I've seen happen about supporting a club over here versus jumping ship with the player when he transfers, whether it's Ronaldo or Messi or what have you.
That links into this question, actually. Sorry, Pete.
I was just going to say, one of the deals we discussed in January on the show was actually Dele Alli. Dele Alli apparently wasn't really part of the discussion at all in January, although he was linked to Newcastle up until the last day of the window, which says to you, which is what you and Chris have just talked about. And I think you're absolutely right in that they're very fluid in that situation. If they see a deal that they think is worthwhile, that could benefit the team, or thank God, in our opinion, that it didn't work out because we've done Everton, but that they are there to do that deal if they feel that it's beneficial. So, in my opinion, we're looking at names on a list, and we're looking at the same names. We've openly talked about the likes of Sven Botman and 1 or 2 others that could potentially come in the summer. I think that list has grown and it's even bigger. There's a huge pool of players now that they're looking at.
I agree with you.
They're actually, all of these players would be players we'd love to have at the club. Let's see how the kind of the cards fold in terms of, or the cards fall, should I say, in terms of the summer window. And we'll see if it's the right deal at the right time, at the right player, and we'll pluck them away.
The Dele Alli situation was defined by a sudden change in Tottenham's attitude to how they wanted paid for him. Right. Dele Alli in the first week of the window would have been 25-30 million up front, thank you very much. Dele Alli on the last day of the window went on buy now, pay later. That's a different deal, guys. It's a very different deal. And one we should have been able to react to because we had the ability to.
Spot on.
Interesting. Linked into that topic is question, as a marquee signing, who do you want the club to buy?
May as well go around the panel for this one.
Great question.
But we start with Mitch.
I'm not bothered about marquee signing at all. I think we'll get one, but I don't think it'll be our main signing of the summer. I do think it'll be somebody who's coming in possibly towards their end of their career, who's a name that people know in the region. That'll fluff a couple of egos somewhere and keep everything happy and ticking. And then the important buys will be the ones that come in below that.
I'll tell you one thing, if that's Jordan Pickford, you can fuck right off.
You know what? He could potentially be on the move with the way Everton. We haven't discussed Everton at all, but with the way they're going at the moment, he could be on the move. But yeah, I don't think he'd be heading to Newcastle. But before we go around the houses in terms of who we think will be the marquee signing, I want to know from you, Mitch, from your perspective, where are you in particular looking to see where we sign? Thinking about positional wise, not necessarily player wise, where do you think we need to really go and improve the team in the summer? What particular area, or more than one?
Goal scorer. I think I'd like to see an absolutely horrible, nasty piece of work at centre back alongside Dan Burke. I'd love a back four of shithouses. That's what I would really like. I think the priority is goal scorer. Imagine having somebody who's real top class number 9, and then we'll look at the bench in certain situations, and we've got Chris Wood and Callum Wilson so that there. What a luxury that would be.
Yeah.
And I think that's, for me, that's a priority. I like Dubravka, but again, there's somebody brought up on horrible, nasty goalkeepers that kick centre backs up the backside and flatten everybody and come for the ball. He's not that. So possibly something that we could strengthen, or at least give him some proper competition. Say, right, you want to keep your place, but you're going to work for it, matey. I think if we can wrap up Target between him and Trippier, we've got one of the best fullback pairings in the league.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about that. Target for me, 7.5, 8 out of 10 every game. Solid citizen. When did we last have that? You know, and Trippier has brought something really different into the club that everybody seems to be thriving on. I think we need I'd like a natural successor to Shelvey in the midfield as well. Somebody who can do the clever stuff that Shelvey can do when he's switched on, but somebody who's switched on all the time and younger and fitter.
Do you see that Bruno Guimaraes eventually taking that role, Mitch? Or do you think he's going to be playing slightly further forward?
I think he's possibly even be sitting further back and dumping the ball off to somebody who can do the magic. If you look at the positions he takes, he wants the ball all the time, but most of his really nice work is done, 5-6 yard pass, give, go, keep the ball circulating, keep the ball moving. Imagine if that move takes it to the edge of their area, and then he can drop it into somebody who can then goes past a man and put in a beautiful cross for a number 90, hit the back of the net with. That's where I see Guimaraes doing his work. He can, because I didn't realise what quality he was until I've spent time looking at him in games, but he could be that player, but I think him alongside a player like that, that's chef's kiss.
Interesting.
Anyone else want to comment on their marquee signing?
I think everyone in the chat has said mine. Adam
got that far yet.
Adam McCarthy knows the score. Darwin Núñez as a frontline striker for me is the one to go for. His age, I think he's 21, Uruguayan international, primed and been sort of nurtured to take the baton of Edison Cavani from an international point of view. He's putting up trees at Benfica. They're in the latter stages of the Champions League. Based on his goal against Ajax, fantastic finish. He can finish in the air. He can finish with the left foot, right foot. He's got pace in and behind. He's a tall lad, so he's physical. I just think he could be a guy that can really develop into a goal machine. And what I love about him is he's got that workman-like press that Edison Cavani had in his prime. The ability to press high, to be a battering ram for defenders. I love the guy, and I really enjoy watching him play. The only worry I have in my mind now is other teams in the Premier League are also looking for a striker. So, for example, Arsenal have been linked with him quite closely in recent weeks. I'm not necessarily worried too much about West Ham. I know they potentially put a bid in January, but that's who I worry about. A team like Arsenal, who are actually playing really well, who would actually really suit their style very, very well. But Darwin Núñez for me would be an outstanding signing. So he's the one that I would go for.
Interesting. I'll keep mine very short. I'll stick with what I said in the January window. I want Botman in to come in, but then going from sensible to crazy, I'll throw in a bid for Haaland as well. Just see what happens. Just the crack. Why not? But
anywhere, a good project.
He does. So anywhere in between there. So I look forward to just being surprised actually. As we get closer to the window and how it all plays out. That's me.
Isn't it wonderful that we talk about who we're going to be buying and not who we're going to be selling, and how much money is Mike Ashley going to keep to himself?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't care.
Will we buy anyone?
It's just wonderful.
I actually don't care. Yeah, exactly. If I was going to back those two, I'd probably run with a couple of the names that I've been privy to kind of seeing. Which hopefully if they come off. So I know Pete and we're both admirers of Darwin Núñez, but if we couldn't get a hold of him, the one name that I've seen a few times is the lad from Napoli, Victor Osimhen, who I would love to see. He would be my summer, and if I was going to put somebody at the back, I'd go a little bit more local, again with a name that I've seen flouted around a little bit, which would be Salisu. So they would be, because I think it gives you that bit of a, from Mitch's point, it gives you that bit of a shit housing defender to go alongside Dan Burn, and then I think Osimhen gives you your youth, your future, and your goals. So there's my two. Got two in the middle, and one in the middle. If I was going to have somebody to replace a Shelby that can play a decent ball, but also get up and down the park, I'd still would love to see the lad that's on loan, I think at Palace, Conor Gallagher. Yeah. He's my legs in my midfield. Since he was back at West Brom and Chelsea, last two seasons, I've loved watching him, and I would love to get him in a black and white shirt. I think it would be amazing in that middle.
Yeah. I think we're all on the same page. Actually, I was thinking Núñez, then I was thinking Botman, and Daz said Botman. Mark, great shout with Aussie man. To say someone different, and I know we've spoken about them before, but just the force of both of them on either wings. Seko Fofana as well. Yeah, well, that's a great shot.
He's leaving.
There was somebody else in the chat that put up Timo Pukki as the summer sign. I was like, who the fuck put that up?
I think just because of the force of them both on either wing, I think I'd say maybe Rafinha, because I know I've noticed him in recent weeks as well. You can tell he's not happy at Leeds. And I'd be very surprised if he didn't leave in the summer. I know there's going to be some big clubs in for him.
I think he's turned down a new contract today, apparently.
Yeah. He's not happy, Mitch. Blatantly not happy. And when he's on fire, I mean, imagine having Rafinha on one wing and Saint-Maximin on the other.
I've seen plenty of them this season, because obviously where I drink is where Leeds fans get in. I've seen quite a few of their games and always have a chat with them. It was funny. I don't know if I told everybody when I was on Amigos. They managed to get Calvin Phillips and Liam Cooper to come and join them in Goodfellas for a pint for one of their games. Somebody noticed they were in Dubai on their Facebook and messaged them and said, "Come and join the Leeds lads," and they showed up. I'm sitting in the pub and thinking, that's Calvin Phillips. What the fuck's he doing here? And then in comes Liam Cooper. It was fantastic, and I've got to say the two lads were lovely. They were good as gold with the Leeds fans. Good as gold with this idiot Geordie that kept coming up asking Calvin Phillips when he's signing for us. And really, really good crack. Really good crack.
Yeah. I think Rafinha for me anyway. That he'd be one I'd definitely be looking at, and I mean, like we've said, lads, you know, it's just nice to be in the mix, isn't it? And have these conversations and know that, you know, we've got this fantastic ownership who have got the fingers in many pies and finger on the pulse. And, you know, I'm like Daz said, I'm happy to just be excited and find out who we get. But I'm fully confident in the ownership, and I'm fully confident in Eddie Howe that we'll bring in the right people.
Every day in January, you're just waking up going, what's going to happen today? You didn't know what was going to happen.
I'm looking forward to the transfer window. I'm not looking forward to the fully loaded transfer shows, which are
every day
and 7 hours at a time. That's probably great to do it, but yeah, oh my god,
it's a marathon.
You got to remember, they're going to be spread over a longer period.
I'm going to take days off before we do it, buddy. I tell you,
a month this time.
That transfer night show was a long afternoon. But great fun, all the same.
Just a little bit of an update, guys. Sky Sports are saying that Roman Abramovich is allowed to put up to 30 million into Chelsea to keep the club in business before it's sold.
There you go.
That's literally a couple of hours.
Administration is looming. They're shitting themselves. They don't want Chelsea to go bust on the hand. 30 million. Do you know what that'll do? It'll pay the wages next month. That's all it'll do.
Yeah.
I think that monthly wage bill is something like 28 million or something.
28 million, yeah. It's going to pay the monthly wages. That's what they're asking them to do, is to pay the wages. Because the only way they were going to pay the wages next month was with promissory notes, basically IOUs.
Did you like Nick DeMarco's tweet, Mitch, when he was saying that apparently Richard Masters said, you're looking about, you can do a deal in 10 days, and Nick DeMarco was like, well, that's funny because it took over a year for the Newcastle deal to go through.
Yeah.
Well, also his little dig about, also the government can get involved, can they?
It's laughable, isn't it? It's laughable to see how they treated the Newcastle takeover to how they're now treating the club.
What the government had done, they've acted because they had to act. They didn't quite act quick enough to get everything off Usmanov, and they've then acted in every way they can to shut Abramovich down, and then gone, oh fuck, what do we do with this now? That's what's happened. Somebody's gone, do you know he's plugging millions of pounds hole every month in this thing? It's going to go and bust in 6 weeks. And they're going, what? We can't get it sold in that kind of time. How the hell's that going to work? Well, tough. You've done it now. And they're crapping themselves. That's why you're going to see all of these things changed and tweaked and changed and tweaked. Because they don't want it to go into administration while it's technically in their hands. And that's classic. That's brilliant. We've literally just talked about this, an hour ago? Yeah. And there you go. Sometimes me and Steve Hasty, because of the amount of stuff we've done in and around football finance, I tell you who used to be gobsmacked at this was Keith. We would tell Keith how something would play out, even to the point of who would say what, when, and what they would say. And he's like, are you two got some sort of crystal ball or what? I says, no, we've just done this for a long time. We know where we're going with it. We know we've seen this play before. And we know what's going to happen. And we look at situations at clubs like Derby, where the only people winning at the minute in Derby are the administrators. Well, we didn't see that coming. And what's happening in Chelsea is they've acted in haste and then shit their pants.
Long may it last.
we have a shitload more questions, Nick. Do you have time? Because I know it's heading towards 1 a.m. there.
It's 20 to 2, mate, but it's fine.
Okay. All right.
Jeez.
So just the 15 questions. Okay.
That's all right.
Let's get a couple more in and then we'll close out, boys.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go for this one.
Nothing too taxing.
Yeah. A question for the panel: which Newcastle player from the past would you love to be a summer signing? Okay, and let's rule out Alan Shearer on this one. And I'll go with Peter Beardsley.
I'll go first. I would love to bring back Gary Speed, please.
Gary Speed. Yeah. Go on.
Good shout.
I said Peter Beardsley.
Good shout. Somebody else can speak.
Andy Carroll, Chris. Andy Carroll.
Do you know what, Daz? I was thinking about it. No, just because he's my favourite player, I'd say Hatton Ben Arthur. And technically, we could actually bring him back.
We could bring him back. Yeah.
He's still smashing it in the Champions League. I just love him.
Yeah.
Good shout.
Playing alongside Botman at the moment.
Yeah.
Big Les Ferdinand.
Yeah, it's great. For
me, I'm looking at strikers. I'm thinking it was either if Alan Shearer was off the table, I'm either going to take Les Ferdinand or Andy Cole. Both of them are an absolute goal scoring machines. But Sir Les is big, strong, can hold up the ball better in the air. He just kind of had the whole package. So for me, in our current setup, he would be ideal as that focal point for you. And I think Dom Kay said the same. Les Ferdinand as well. I'd go with that 100%.
Well, we know that Dom's from last night's show will be Shola Amiobi.
Yeah.
I was at the same choice as you, Pete. It's Andy Cole for me. Provided pointing with your arm doesn't mean your shirt's offside. Because I reckon if a load of his goals went to VAR, he'd be given offside.
Oh, he'd be gone. Yeah, he'd have never made that 40-goal season. Not a whole.
As long as that's not the rule anymore, we'll have Andy Cole.
Yeah,
I don't think he'd have got to 100 Premier League goals for us or Man United or Blackburn if that rule was in place during his
exactly.
Definitely. All right. Next, Daz. One more.
Okay, one more. Okay, this is a good one, I think, from Gary. Let's go back to dentistry. Mitch, which person or persons would you love to do your dentistry work on?
Oh.
It's like a spin on Dom's question last night on who would you like to interview. So this is Mitch's equivalent.
Surely Beardsley's up there somewhere.
And do you know what it is? I've been really lucky out here. I've actually looked after quite a few people who you may know. And do you know the only person I've ever got starstruck over was when I realised Roy Aitken was in the waiting room.
Oh, wow.
And he was my captain growing up and going to away games and cutting my teeth, you know. And I went a little bit like, it's Roy Aitken. And honestly, I've looked after bloody sheikhs and princes, and I had Poirier in a couple of times. Don't hold the red and white bit against him. He's quite a nice bloke, to be fair.
Couldn't drive a bus, though.
No, and in questionable bathroom habits. So, I mean, who would I like to do? Do you know what? I'm really blessed that a lot of my patients become my friends. It's kind of how it works out here. People don't really understand how villagey Dubai can be, because it works in sort of small communities and things like that, and word of mouth is such a huge thing. Yeah. When people ask me, he's such a dentist in Dubai, how does he know this and how he is know that? Well, they've all got teeth. And anybody who's vaguely into football often gets sent my way. That's Geordie dentist in can't see him, and he'll look after you, and you can have a bit chat about football, which is usually why I run late. And so it's not about picking and choosing who you do. I'm blessed with anybody that comes and sees us. But what I think really does stand out, the amount of people, I'm genuinely never frightened to give my personal mobile number to anybody, because nobody takes the piss out of it. If somebody really needs help, they'll reach out to us, and if somebody, can wait, they'll wait. And I'm really lucky to see everybody that I see. It's part of the job that I really love is sort of that, the human interaction and learning, well, this one's mates with that one, and that one's cousin, and this one got referred by this one, and that one got referred by this one. It's that. So I don't think it's up to me to pick and choose who I see. I'm blessed with anybody who is daft enough to come and sit in my chair.
There you go.
Yeah, fair play.
Yeah. And now at least we know where the old dentist chair celebration for England came from.
I wish.
Yeah.
Exactly. There you go.
Right.
Lads.
We'll end it there. Look, from a personal point of view, it's been a pleasure to have you on, and I know
Daz has had
Cheers,
enough.
guys.
He's
Yeah.
just like,
Daz
Daz is like,
He's off.
fuck that shite. I've done the questions. I'm
Fuck
gone.
you, then.
Did he freeze up?
Exactly. Yeah.
Look, from a personal point of view, Mitch, it's been a pleasure. I didn't get a chance to share the show with you last time, but you in particular got me through lockdown. Personally, your knowledge, your the way in which you speak about Newcastle so passionately, your knowledge about the club, how you articulate that is fascinating. And I enjoy watching you every week on the Amigos. I love listening to your points of view on Twitter. Everyone else in the chat tonight has said exactly the same. They have absolutely loved this show because of the way in which you talk on a real, genuine level about this club, and it's been an absolute pleasure for me. I know for a fact for the boys as well to have you on. So just a massive thank you from that point of view for taking the time and staying so late with us over at your.
If you want to get an idea about what shapes me and partly makes me who I am and where I am about Newcastle United, partly have a little look at what my dad says on Geordie's here, Geordie's there, and on the railroad. Got so much to thank him for, and my grandfather before him, what have you. But we did a pre-record the night before I come and joined you for next week, and we're talking about favourite Newcastle games. And if you catch that next week, mine will probably throw everyone, but it's something that helped shape me to be the way I am, why I'm sometimes painfully optimistic, why I'm stubborn and belligerent at times, and why I'm not afraid to voice an opinion. And I think that gives a little window into what goes on here when I start talking about Newcastle United. And so yeah, and thanks. Look, at doing stuff like this is great because I get a chance to yak away on my own and take things in different directions, which I love to do anyway.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. Look, I think I had sent you a couple of messages over back end of Christmas stuff when you sent me messages about me dad and stuff like that. And I think for me and Daz, I know he started off because he doesn't give a shit as usual, but when we first kind of launched Loaded and we went out on our own, you were massively supportive. So we've come a long way, but I think part of that journey would never have started if it wasn't for you and Steve and Steve Hasty, but in particular yourself, some of the support we got in the early days where we weren't perhaps getting the views and the numbers we were getting and the traction we were getting as a channel. I remember you saying distinctly, lads, doesn't matter, keep talking about the stuff you love. And that's what we're doing. So I think Daz is back again. I don't know what he's doing. So listen, I think it's always brilliant to have you on, and you could sit here and chat for absolute hours listening. And I'm sure I probably speak for most of the boys, but yeah, we'd love to maybe have a look and see, can we do something a little bit more regular and get you on maybe once a month or something, and let's just sit and shoot the breeze like we do. That'd be great. I think we could do something. But yeah, so thanks for me.
Don't have a problem with that at all, lads. Happy to help.
On a show level and a personal level. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Mitch. Thanks for joining us,
guys.
and for staying up late as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Work tomorrow.
Daz, I don't know if Mitch has seen it. Can we play out with the Howe music? I think he'll love that.
Oh yeah, we can, of course.
But just before that though,
what else have we got?
Everyone needs to subscribe.
We've
had loads of new people joining the show tonight. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. We're on the march to 3K subscribers. We've had over 200 watching in the chat tonight.
Pretty much all night, yeah, amazing.
Pretty much for the whole show, which is fantastic. And of course, if you haven't already, check out Black and White Army, Bronwyn's clothing line. Lots and lots of fantastic stuff in there. She has her new clothing line, which we will be part of that launch with later on down the line. Mark, do you want to talk about Shy Burns?
Yeah, shyburns.com. Simon was in the chat. Again, he's got a fantastic clothing range, baseball caps, hoodies, sweatshirts, t-shirts, and polo shirts. And he does a link in with a couple of the mental health charities, something that's very, very close to myself. And also must give a massive shout out to our other lad who is missing tonight, Richie Story. Not too well this evening, but something very, very close to mine and Richie's heart with mental health, in particular men's mental health. So get on there, get yourself some really good clobber. And every sale that goes through the tills, Simon gives 10% of all the proceeds out to those mental health charities through some of his partners. So get on there and get yourself something good and help out men's mental health.
Fantastic. Brilliant stuff. And also Pins and Prints. Pins and Prints is the new sponsor that we have joining Loaded. Some of these are fantastic. We showed them last night. We'll show them again. The Trippier goal. We've got the famous Papi Cissé goal at Stamford Bridge. We've got some mashups of the old kits as well. And obviously the cult hero at the moment, Joelington. And as well as that, the old spectacles himself, John Joe Shelby. Definitely talked about one or two other specialties that we've talked to Pins and Prints about that we're going to put together. I've certainly put one out there with the Laurent Robert 32 with his old shirt on the back. I'd love to have something like that. So fingers crossed as well. So check out Pins and Prints if you haven't already. Again, another fantastic sponsor of Loaded HQ.
Yeah, just want to say it then as well. Of course, last night we had Dom on with us. Go back and check out that show if you didn't get to see it. Great chat with Dom. And we did go into the detail on the financial fair play news that came out on the night. Now, coming up next week, we have a lot of new shows to plan. That they're not even listed on YouTube yet. They're growing day by day. One that is coming up next Wednesday, Martin. You set me the challenge to come up with a poster for you. So here's your poster for Wednesday. Here he
is. He's back. So Ben Jacobs, he's been on a few times. Had a good chat with him yesterday evening after we came off the show. So Ben is coming back next Wednesday evening. Obviously, there'll be a little bit of Leicester chat, I'm sure, in there somewhere. But we're going to chat Newcastle as it currently stands. Have a bit of a rewind on the Eddie Howe piece. Definitely a bit of chat on the whole NUFC window. And I'm sure there'll be a little bit about the current status of Chelsea and everything else. So look forward to that one. Wednesday night, 8 o'clock. Us guys with Ben Jacobs. So catch that and catch us next Wednesday night.
Cheers, Martin. Then as we get back into the games and as well, we will have an away days, Pete, coming up probably on the Friday.
Yeah. So Fuad from Stoppage Time TV is going to be joining us again, talking all things Newcastle United and Tottenham. Obviously, they're on a little bit of a rise at the moment. And if you didn't check out the first away days that myself and Martin were on with Fuad,
that was one of the best away days we've done.
It was a fantastic one.
It was a men's show, yeah.
He's a great guy.
Man.
Fantastic knowledge of football in general, not just of Tottenham Hotspur. So away days will be back. More details will be out very shortly.
Yep. Now, as well as that, there's going to be more shows that are going to pop onto YouTube as well. So keep an eye on to that. So if you subscribe, you'll get to hear about it first. But there's something, Martin, I think you want to talk about. Would that be right?
So we've got, I'm still waiting to confirm some dates, but definitely before the end of the season, linking into one of the Newcastle games, one of the home games, hopefully pre-game, not sure whether it's going to be a live or a pre-record, but we will have the one and only Trevor Sinclair, ex-West Ham, sport pundit and talk sport pundit, has agreed yesterday evening, chatting to him on a DM, and he's agreed to come on Loaded Mag. So he's going to come on. He's going to chat about all the recent goings on. He's going to chat about why. And to be fair, he's given NUFC a good bit of backing on TalkSport and some of the other shows. So, once we get some dates, we get a bit of confirmation. But, we've got the thumbs up. So Trevor Sinclair will be coming on. So that will be a massive, massive show.
Very good.
Once we know that, we'll get the dates out. We'll get the posters out. But join us for that. That should be huge.
And as I said, there's a few more big, massive names that we haven't dropped at all. So we'll keep that quiet, but it's coming up shortly.
Exactly, yeah.
Once again,
get subscribed and keep watching.
Yeah,
exactly. Once again, Mitch, thanks for joining us. And thanks, boys, as well. Thanks, everyone, for watching. and for your comments and questions in the chat. And we'll play out with Eddie Howe, I guess.
Why not?
Thanks
How?
for watching,
Cheers,
everybody.
everyone.
Thanks, Mitch. Good night, everyone.
See you guys.
Good night, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
Oh.